So thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. I know you have traveled from, you are Texas ladies, but you had to make the commitment, and you're busy as well. You all run multi-million-dollar businesses, and you're global leaders, and you're committed to serve your communities. And thank you for coming here and to inspire and enlighten the global women community in Houston. So I want to start with Marianne, because Marianne, you have been a great influencer in my life. You are the role model. Have you realized when you discover somebody who is incredible, and you say, I want to be touched by her? And what do? You just ask the question, and then the answer comes. So when I met Marianne, it was like almost 12 years ago. I had just moved to London. I was absolutely lost and broken, but she did see something on me. And from that time, she became like a mentor, a guide, an enlightenment for me. And what I really love with Marianne is she doesn't come here like, look at me, because she's in top 1% of this country and maybe in the whole world. Not only because she where she's coming from, but what she has achieved and what she has dedicated with her mission as a humanitarian leader has touched millions of people around the world. But she sees people in a very, very humble way and inspires and changes their lives. So Marianne, I know your childhood hasn't been that easy. And for sure, that has also shaped the personality that you have become today. And that's why you see people who have challenges as incredible human beings, and you support them. Mm-hmm. So would you like to share with us how was your childhood, and how did that impact the way you have become today?
Well, my name is Marianne Thompson-Frank, and as I was sharing with someone earlier, my life has been a very surreal one. And what I invite you to do as you hear this story is to think about your own life. Everything is actually serendipity. If I sit back and I look at the accomplishments that I've been able to have, I feel like there's been a secret silent partner in it all. Because if I've accomplished anything, it's that I recognize puzzle pieces that are put in front of me and have the audacity to connect them. And sometimes they connect well, sometimes I fall flat on my face. But when they connect well, magic happens. So what I invite you to do is look at your own lives and ask yourself, how can you be a co-creator? You can call it spirit, call it serendipity, you call it what you want. For me, it's spirit. But how can you be a co-creator with that? Because when you look at your life that way, it is phenomenal what can happen. And for me, one of the ways that I was invited into seeing this world through those lenses is I was literally born on Mother's Day in 1977 at 7:11 a.m. And the reason why that made any difference at all in my life is because here in Texas, my father was the CEO of 7-Eleven at the time. My mom, she had been a stewardess. She had degrees in business and nursing. And here they were. He was in his 50s. She was in her 40s. And they were told, you're too old. You can't adopt a kid. We're not going to let you have it. They tried another time. They were about to adopt a pair of African-American twins. They named them. They bought the clothes for them. They bought the twin beds for them. And then within about 24 hours before, they were told in 1975, you're the wrong race. We're not going to let you do an interracial adoption. So this was kind of the era that they were living in. And my dad had 3 children before he married my mom, with a different marriage. Married someone, that didn't work. Then he fell in love with my mom. And she just wanted one kid. But when they asked Father William Lawson, who was a very close friend of the family's, can you help us have one of your kids? He ran orphanages called Our Little Children of the Orphanages, and they would take kids in at any age that they got them. They'd keep them there until 12th grade. The kids would donate 3 years of their life helping the other kids, and then he got them all into college. Now there's all over the world. Incredible work. But he said, if I let one of my kids get adopted, all the rest are going to feel bad, so I can't do that. But when I was born in 1977 at 7:11 a.m. on Mother's Day, he said, okay, God has other plans for this kid. So he called my mom up, and they were good friends, and he said, hey, happy Mother's Day. And before he could say why, she said, that's not funny, and she slammed the phone down. Oh. And he's like, okay, I'm not a joke. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. And so I was brought here, and when I was 5 days old, into the United States, and I have memories of becoming a citizen, of going into a room at 5 years old, because I was brought here 5 days old, but when I was 5 years old, I went in to get naturalized. And I remember coming into this big, it looked so intimidating, this huge platform, and then a big thing in front of the judge, and this man leaning down over, and he says, "Do you want to be an American, my child?" And I'm just like, and the thing that I literally said, because I'm this small and I'm looking up at this guy and I'm like, "Will I still be brown?" That was literally the thing that I said to them. And when I came back from that, I'll never forget, he said, "Yes, we have brown people here, black people here, we got yellow people here, we got red people." He sounded like he was giving an auctioneer. He said, "We got them all. And any one of them can be in America." And I remember my parents playing Neil Diamond's song, "They're coming to America," and singing, and just the immensity of that and the feeling of privilege. And then as I grew older and I would spend time in the hospital, sometimes a month long because of asthma, or I would be dealing with seizures and migraines that could last, that's nonstop throwing up, being in the dark, and excruciating pain for weeks at a time, in danger of basically dehydration. All these different things I went through, learning how to speak and say the word crown and crayon, and having people put on gloves in my mouth so that I can say it perfectly and speak the way it's supposed to be spoken and not the way I necessarily hear it. All those things. Now I've spoken in the White House, the House of Lords, the United Nations, TEDx, and these things were possible because of opportunity. But most of all, they were possible for a combination of things. One, not everybody has those opportunities. I was told I was a child prodigy with art, but then I would go down and visit Mexico with my parents, and I would see kids that were making pottery that was just as good, if not much better than mine. And they're going, "Please, dear God, buy this so that I can eat, this week." And I saw that. And for me, that didn't compare with having a gold star in school. And I realized if I were that kid, and I saw some hoity-toity tourists walk by, I would be saying, "God, if I were her, if I were that snob in heels, I would be doing this with my life and that with my life." And so I tell people I have two selves. There's the life of opportunity that being adopted into a family of privilege gave me, and there's the life of who that person would have been. And I would have been saying things that you wouldn't understand because I would only been able to emulate what others said, imitate that sound. You wouldn't have known I had a brain. So here, when I live this life, I have to live with intention and hold myself accountable to who that little girl could have been. If she would have said, if I would do this with my life, would I go out and I buy that $5,000 pair of shoes, or would I go feed these people? Mm-hmm. And there are times when I indulge in a pair of shoes, but if I do, I know and I'm conscious I'm making that. And it's not about guilt. It's about awareness. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that we all have to navigate our lives with, because if you navigate with awareness and excitement and appreciation, a lot of times people we think of gratitude as supplication. Gratitude is a power. When I go into a room, I start with my mentality going, I am grateful to be alive. I was told I would be deaf by the time I was 20. I'm 47 now. That is a lot of life to have heard music, to have danced, to have enjoyed. I've had surgery. I was going to go blind. I can see right now. I can breathe right now. What these things teach me, having a hearing loss taught me the value of listening, really being present. Mm-hmm. Having had a stroke from migraines and seizures, a big wake-up call, having a brush with death, because it told me to be selfish. And that sounds weird. But when I'm selfish about who I spend my time with and what I'm focused on. There's a gift in having a near-death experience, but you don't have to have it to have that awareness. So what I invite you, when you look at my story, ask yourself, everything that you have now is because of a lot of serendipity. You met somebody who opened a door, who knew some things, and some of us feel like no one has all the luck. Believe it or not, you are alive today because of a lot of luck that you may not be aware of. Something made you late and kept you from getting into a car wreck. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Yeah. But when we are aware of it and we co-create the lives around us, I have now negotiated the first treaty in 300 years between the Hopi and Navajo tribes. I brought the most people forward for reconciliation, with the Liberian Reconciliation Commission. I've been able to head up an organization that saved $55 million worth of food by being thrown to landfills and gotten to hungry people. And all this is because of amazing hard work other people have around us. We have an AI that's going there to help the United Nations be able to themselves with Sustainable Development Goals. We're able to do real things, miraculous things, but because of three things: gratitude, audacity. Believe me, I can tell everybody in this room is eager and ready, and that's what attracts me to Mirela and who she brings around her. But if you are eager and ready, own it, know you deserve it, You don't have to have all the pieces in your hand. You know how a lot of men do business? They come in and say, I got B. They don't. Can you give me A? Oh, you have that? Okay. Then I go over her. Oh, you have. I have A. You have B. Okay, great. And then I go over, before I even had the two of them, I go to her and say, hey, can you give me C if I get you B and A? Great. That is what men do. Women, we go, do I really have this? Is my word really
even
strong?
If you have it.
Yeah, but they ask, do you have this? Do you have that? Yeah, and own what you have. And remember your grandmothers who could barely dream living the life that you live now. If you are educated, you own property, you have a bank account, you have incorporated something, you're doing things that only 2 generations ago women couldn't do.
Wow.
So think about that.
That's amazing. Every time I spend moments, and it has been a long journey now since we started this friendship, I just feel transformed. Each time I hear you speak, I feel like, wow, you're absolutely a powerhouse. So it's a great honor to have you here with us, Marianne. So I want to turn to the other friend that you met. And I think most of you are going to continue following up with Sherry, because she has the gift of seeing something in others. And I think maybe that is another experience of having near-death experience, because you went through that. You went through lots of challenges, and through the whole day we have been talking about how these adversities are gifts in our life and how do they make us stronger. So tell us about these experiences you had to go through yourself, and how do you turn them into opportunities and possibilities?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the mind candy. Number 3, right? Thank you, crabby nurse. What does that mean? That's weird. I had to have a mastectomy surgery, which is the removal of both breasts, which is really brutal. And it was to be able to survive, and drain tubes, terrible things. The nurse put me in, said, bring your husband's dress shirt. It's not cute anymore when you've lost your breast to wear, you're not sexy in your husband's dress shirt, right? That's not the thing. I got in the wheelchair. She handed me these drain tubes that were actually tied to my body. And she said, I'm like, ma'am, I need my hands. And she says, oh, don't worry. We give you safety pins. Like, that's not equipment. I'm not walking through my house with these nasty drains that are just hanging off my clothes with the safety pins, right? And then I started thinking, I'm reverse engineering now, like really fast, even though I was on a lot of different pain medicines. I'm like, if a man lost his man parts in the war against cancer, they would have a floating velvet George Jetson little pad where he doesn't have to think about anything anymore, right? But ladies, I'm just like, what year is this? Do you not have proper equipment? I mean, I'm just struggling here. And so she starts to push me down the thing. I have Blackfoot Indian in me that I'm very proud of, okay? And so I was pretty much like having a fit in the wheelchair. And I'm like, if this is happening to me, it's happening to everybody. There's no comfort and dignity for women to hide our battle body. Okay, so I invented what's called the Heal and Comfort shirt. This is my challenge, was to make something better for other people. Hid the drains inside. It looks like you're going to spin class. You look like kind of cool like that. So I only wanted to start with $1,000 to help 100 patients. That's it. I don't want to deal with cancer. I'm not going on the runs. I'm not putting balloons on my face. None of it. It is a dreadful battle. Okay, and well, God had a different plan. And I'm thankful and grateful every day that I have breath in my body. It was a pretty big deal, guys. He turned the $1,000 to help 100 patients into ready 150,000 souls. With that $1,000, why did I stay with the $1,000? I want to give back and stay authentic to my story and bootstrap. Who knows what bootstrap is? It means you do it on your own. Okay? Because bad debt can make you paralyzed and your brain goes just panicked. All you're trying to do is pay the bills. So that is my journey through the cancer thing. And the rubber meets the road. when somebody says you have cancer. The rubber meets the road. Who are you? Where's your fight? Are you really all that confident about that? I'm telling you, it is when the rubber meets the road, is when there is no sight that it's going to be okay.
Well, and I
you.
guess we have another speaker here who had lots of these roads, not just one, not just 3, not just 13, not just 30. Oh my God, when I met Marie Cosgrove in London for the very first time, I've been crying all night because she came in my studio and shared her story, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I said, when is she going to finish these horrible stories that have happened in her life? And it's no end. It's no end. And then I'm just waiting, when is the light coming? But when the light came, I am telling you, this woman, oh my God, she not only made sure that this light is going to stay with her forever, but she shared it with others. So Marie, I mean, since then I have had Marie everywhere. I mean, we travel, she comes to London and New York and all around the world, and your story is just so uplifting. I mean, are you ready for this? I mean, in a very short time, I know your story is like a best-selling book now, but I know 2 minutes, you're going to get a little bit more, but please tell us how that story now is inspiring millions.
Sure. Well, actually, my story actually started before I was even born.
Yeah. Both you and Marianne have really interesting
Marianne
beginnings.
is a miracle child, and I'm so honored to be next to her. I love, the entire
Feelings mutual.
panel. And all of you actually are miracles. Every single one of you has purpose, and there's not a single person that can duplicate any single one of you. And like someone was saying earlier, every one of you has ideas. Mirela was sharing this morning, has ideas that can transform the world. And a lot of times as women, we have this, not all of us, obviously y'all do not, but a lot of us, at one point in time, some of us have had this comparison problem of, I wish I can be successful as her. And like Mirela said, you might be talking to the next millionaire, billionaire, because millionaire is nothing nowadays. Is it? Billionaire. You might be talking to the next billionaire next to you. But my story began before I was even born. And I always thought that I had no value, I had no purpose. In 1969, on New Year's Day, my grandfather was traveling to Mexico to a wedding. My mother was in the car. And suddenly, things can change in an instant. We're talking about 1 second.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Was driving straight. It was raining. It was dark and thundering. There was no signs. There was no lights. And suddenly, on the most dangerous track known even today, the Devil's Spine, he crashed and her head was completely crushed. 24 hours passed and nobody stopped to render aid except for looters who stole everything that they had. They took luggage, everything that they had. They got to, finally, 24 hours later, a Good Samaritan stopped by and offered aid and took them to the closest hospital. At the hospital, the doctors said, "You are so lucky that she's still alive. But there's no chance of recovery here because she has severe bleeding in the brain." And my grandmother had very strong faith, and science has proven that everyone has faith, whether it's religious or not. There's a part of the brain that controls that. And so we all have faith. It's either you have faith that nothing can happen, or you have faith that it can, right? So she had this incredible faith, and she says, "You do surgery to stop the bleeding in the brain." And the doctor said, "You don't understand. We don't have a surgeon skilled enough to do surgery. By the time we bring someone in from the hospital, from another hospital, she'll be dead. And if she's alive, she'll die on the operating table or be a vegetable the rest of her life." And she insisted that they bring in a surgeon. So they brought in a surgeon. He performed the surgery, and she survived the surgery, but she was in a coma. And we're talking about proximity, about networking, and how important networking is. And you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with this story, right? But my grandmother had become friends with all the people in the staff and became really good friends with one of the nurses. And they decided they're going to pull the plug. And she says, no, just please do not pull the plug. I'm going to take her to the States. So she connected with one of the nurses that they hired her, and they brought her to the United States. And again, this is where relationships are so important. This nurse had a relationship with a doctor in Monterey. She's got brain damage. She can't decide. You need to sign. And like they told your parents, you're too old. They told my grandparents, you are too old. You cannot take care of this child. Not only that, you don't have the financial means to take care of a child with birth defects. But my grandmother had, can you all guess? She had what? Faith. Can you all say it really loud? Faith. Faith. We all need faith. And she had faith, and she says, I am going to help raise this child, however this child comes out. And because of that one decision, one simple decision you can make can change the trajectory of someone's life, just like yours. That one decision from that, that called your dad, right? That one decision is why I'm here today. Yeah. And it has reminded me that life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful.
Yeah.
And sometimes I believe that through adversity we experience the biggest miracles.
Yes.
And I do a lot of speaking to corporations and government organizations, and I really believe that resilience is so important now more than ever, because when you face adversity, if you have resiliency, you can overcome anything. And so that's basically where my story started right before. But I think that having that resilience and that faith helps you carry you through whatever challenges you may face in business or in your personal life.
Well, I'm coming back because there are lots of other stories that, in fact, come in the journey. Because, have you realized that something happens and it impacts something else? And all these decisions and these choices, in fact, shape who we are today. And there is not such thing accident. Especially success is not an accident. Achievement is not an accident. And what Marie will share maybe a little bit later will show that it is possible to achieve what we are meant to achieve if we take that right decision. So, Marianne, we've been talking a lot about adversities and how we build resilience, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, and how do we turn all of these superpowers into something that contribute to the world. And if there is one example that I know in the world that you use all your resources to put it out there and invest and bring back and contribute, that's you. So where does that drive come from?
Yeah, well, there are two things. I like to call myself a humanitarian because sometimes philanthropy is important and sometimes an investment is important. So a couple of years ago, we got 160 families out of the war zone in the Sudan to the safety of South Sudan. And we did that with a wonderful man named Emmanuel Jal. But then what happens is that you have 160 families sitting in the dirt. People taking their photos, oh, aren't I great? But that's not the story. That the full story is philanthropy is not going to take care of their grandchildren. So what now has to happen is a for-profit investment must be made to help people. And so for me, what I look at is I have two one's the Mimsy Institute, that's the nonprofit, and we're focused on helping people deal with the challenges of globalization in the world. And that's done everything from, like I mentioned earlier, negotiating treaties, coming up with programs, developing an AI, many things. We have international chapters, one in Asia that's working on reconciliation between South Korea and Japan. We have campuses in Mexico serving the Tolteca people of Teotihuacan and the Maya in the Yucatan. We have an international chapter that is also in the UK that serves people throughout the continent of Africa, and as well as India, New Zealand, any other place essentially that the British once invaded, it also serves. But all of these things that we do, it came from one particular space, and my interest in social responsible investing occurred at the same time. And that was because when I was about 22, 23 years old, I got the idea that I wanted to invite spiritual leaders from all over the world, Eastern, Western, New Age, Indigenous, and I wanted to have them come together and do a task. They weren't paid for this. We paid for their travel. Dallas is not necessarily like going to Hawaii, so they weren't doing it for that. For some reason, all of these incredibly important spiritual leaders said yes to me. Looking back, I don't know why they did. But I started realizing something was going a little bit more beyond just me in that moment, because literally about 48 hours, we lost all our African spiritual representatives. And I went, okay. And I literally got on my knees in my office. I said, God, if you intend to have some indigenous African voices at the thing, it's in your hands now, because I don't even know where to begin. Well, within an hour, I got contacted by a woman, Her Excellency Oye Aina Olomo, second to the throne in Benin. And she's the first female Yoruba priestess in the Americas. Said, hey, I found out that you're doing a conference on interfaith. Do you mind if I come? I'm actually teaching at University of Texas, but I would love to come up there and represent my people. Okay, yes. I then went out to, and I said, you're not going to believe this, Alan, my assistant. And we walked to a place that was at the time called Cosmic Cafe around the corner. And I said, I really need two, three ideally. And while we're sitting there, he said, well, how are you going to find one? It's not like someone's going to just walk in there. Well, right at that moment, you couldn't have timed it. The door flings open, sun is beaming, a man is in all white robes, African mask around his neck, flanked by 3 men on either side of him dressed the exact same way, and they're in black robes, and they walk in, and Alan looks at me and goes, only you. And then he looks at me and goes, what are you going to do? You're not going to just walk over and say, hi, excuse me, do you happen to be a spiritualist? He said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. He's like, oh my God, I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you. And I walk over to him and I said, excuse me, would you happen to be a spiritual leader? And I will never forget, it was the most wonderful answer. His name is Kalindi Ayi. And he looked at me and said, I would not say that I'm a spiritual leader. I would say I am blessed to serve many. I was like, I want you. And long story short, we ended up with 3 African indigenous spiritual leaders at the conference.
Wow.
And I share that because this is how things move.
Yeah.
And when you're doing a dance, it's like a tango. And, so we finished that documentary, and fast forward, my husband was the one who was doing all the directing. And so we had our producer walk in our house, and it was about 3 a.m., which is not unusual if any of you have ever done anything with a film. So anyway, but it's a God moment because you could not plan this. I'm literally as close to Marie as he's walking through the door. I'm on this side. He gets a phone call from the chief of the Navajo Nation. I get a phone call from the chief of the Hopi Nation, Lilo Mastroya, and we're not trying to hear each other. I have a hearing loss, but we're this close, and we hear them both say almost simultaneously, hey, this woman and these 3 men stopped by today, and they want us to sign the dotted line because they want a slurry that means move the coal through the water, and it's going to end up poisoning the water of one tribe. But they like us better, and they'll make sure our water doesn't get contaminated if we agree to sign line. Obviously, they're playing both tribes against each other. The chances that 3 a.m. we would be staying next to each other, and we were the ones that those chiefs called. I mean, 1 in a million. And we said, don't sign anything. And so I got on the phone. I said, would you all be willing to? No, we've been at war for 300 years. We're not going to come together. And I went, okay, fine. Well, let me tell you what. Tell me how many people are on your leadership. Traditional leadership, tribal leadership. Tribal leadership is what the United States government makes them have. Traditional is what they've had forever. I said, tell me how many, I will buy books, John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I sent it to them, and I said, if you agree to meet by the end of this week, we'll make it happen. They called me in 3 days, said, we'll meet. First time in 300 years. I was very naive. I had no idea that the first 3 people who had tried to do this, 2 had been shoved off the road, another had been shot in the head. All 3 had been assassinated. I had no idea that Peabody, Sith, and Blackstone had gone in the 1800s to try and basically set things up to hurt these people because it was actually lucrative to do so. Won't go into that. But I remember holding babies I thought were dying of cancer, and they were dying from arsenic poisoning. Aww. And so, learning all this, getting them together into a room. We went to Taos, New Mexico. I was like, where can I find a bunch of Native Americans where no one's going to think twice about it? We put them in a hotel where all the rooms were really themed, intentionally over the top expensive. Intentionally, one room was Africa themed, one room was Caribbean themed. And I remember the first day of our coming together, we came in, they had water like this. Some was carbonated, some was still. And this one Navajo woman picked up, took a big sip, spat it all over me. You're trying to poison me. Like, no, it's carbonated. So we went through this series, and tensions were high. There had been a bunch of teenage Navajo that beat up a bunch of elderly Hopi, like right the day of this meeting. But over the course of time, I pulled in my experiences of thankfully being brought up in a corporate family with ethics. But my father told me, I want you to know how sharks operate. So he had taught me how evil people could be. So I sat there and I said, I'm going to give you 10 things of if I were the evil outsider, what I would do. And I came in and one thing after another. Like I would come in and I would just go ahead and get the copyright and the DNA of all this coin, and you can't grow it anymore. I could do this, and the more I'm saying this, I'm seeing their expressions. And finally, when I got to the 10th, they're like, stop. How can anyone come up with so much evil? I said, unfortunately, really easily. And then I brought out a chessboard and I said, you're trying to fight as an individual pawn. Nowhere in the history of chess has an individual pawn defeated an entire other set. You need each other. And more, you need all the other tribes that rely on this water. We got them to sign that treaty. I felt so proud of myself. And then I finished my bachelor's degree in business, and for the first time I could read the hieroglyphics of my trust fund, and I discovered I was invested in Sith Peabody and Blackstone.
Oh.
Wow.
It was like discovering you had blood on your hands. I went to my extended family and said, I want you to come together and fight with me. We tried to do shareholder activism. Unfortunately, they've been so smart, they made it so only certain types of shareholders could direct, so I sold all my shares and went into social responsible investing. So later, everything that came out of what all the spiritual leaders did, which included the Hopi and the Navajo, we had 10 essential truths, which became like the core values of what is now the Ministry Institute. So my interest in social responsible investing and philanthropy began at that moment.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. And thank you for sharing in such a simple way. So the whole big story that could be a week story, we got to know in just a few minutes. That's wonderful. But what inspired me also, the way that she learned from her father and how much impact our parents have in our life. And yesterday you're telling me, what did you teach your daughter? When you took her, you closed her eyes and you say, what do you see? What do you feel? What do you smell? Can you tell me a little piece of this story, because it was so powerful?
As long as I can tell them that you are walking beside me with no situational awareness. So Mirela's just happy. She's like walking around with the sunshine, right? So I'm like, Mirela, walk single file here. And she's like, what? No, I'm fine. Leave me alone. That's okay. I said, no, you need to walk single file. I need to be able to see the situation as we were crossing over a questionable person at the time. So we did this a couple times, and she goes, why are you doing that? And I was like, I'm aware of my environment, and I'm watching over my friend who is not. And she's just like, take my picture, let's do this, let's go there. And these guys are
Somebody say, would you like us to take a picture? Say, yeah, take my phone.
Anyway, so what I did as a parent, my daughter was the same sunshine, ball of sunshine. Everybody's her friend. She was young, she's getting ready to go to college. I took her down to Orlando, Florida at the time, took her into some dark alleys. And I said, close your eyes. And she goes, why are we here? Close your eyes. What do you hear? What do you feel? Right? Tell me how you feel in this dark alley. And she told me. I said, let's go over here. We'll go over there. Different situation. Get on the grass. Get over here. I had her do the same exercise all over. And she stopped being just a big happy face and started looking around. I see, you're holding your purse? No, ma'am, you don't walk through there like this. This is what I was saying to Mirela. You don't have your purse hanging off like this, okay? Just because you don't be inviting to bad, okay? So I do believe that as parents, to actually do the physical learning instead of a lot of words and, let them experience it. But if you're out there anywhere, try that exercise. Just close your eyes and understand, I feel threatened right now. We move past it because we want to be a happy face. But sometimes it could actually save your life. Yeah. And it has done in one occasion with me.
Everything is energy, and I really loved your
the energy
example.
feel.
Like, close your eyes. What do you sense?
What do you feel? What do you feel?
Maybe we can have a little experiment here. If you close your eyes right now for 1 minute, what do you feel? What do you sense? What do you see? What do you experience?
I see intuitive intelligence.
Can you just take yourself to your higher self and just repeat in silence, I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. Now open your eyes. Wow, that was, thank you for creating this magic, because Marianne inspired me with her father's story, but we all have stories that we carry with us. And it's important that we understand that we live in a world full of opportunities, but also we have to make sure that we are aware, we are present, we are conscious, we are awakened, and we take responsibility. Where do we put the next step? What is coming? We are able to see things before they come.
Did anybody feel literally the love in this room? Did you? This is what encircled my brain, was it's almost like we're all holding hands, lifting one another up. Not just words. I felt it. Did you feel it? Yes, I did too.
And now, to follow this, I'm going to invite Marie to share, because it's in a very the same context. So what happened with Marie? She was a little happy, me or you or anybody else, where she believed that the world is safe. Everybody is a good person. So she's in a relationship with someone, and the kids are happy, racing in a family, until one day comes back from her work and finds what?
My kids were on their knees crying, and their dad was with a belt, snapping it. And I said, what happened? He says, I'm trying to scare them because they're not listening. And I looked at the kids and I said, he hit us. And he said, no, they're lying. I would never hurt them. I love them. And my son, Justin, you met him because you saw him playing. He does classical music. He's done 100 compositions. He was on his knees and there was blood coming down from his shorts. This was like the most painful experience I have ever gone through. So I just grabbed them and I left. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. I was a marketing director managing $600 million marketing budget. And I left. And I got myself and my kids to safety. I left a good job with insurance, no car, no home, nothing. But my kids were going to be safe. I didn't want my kids to ever be hurt again or touched or abused. I ended up raising my kid. Dad lost parental rights. I raised my kids single-handedly as a single mom. But that is so important what you're talking about, because like you said, Mirela, you blame it on yourself. Oh, I'm misinterpreting, or I'm mishearing, and then you blame yourself when you're in a domestic violence situation. I was speaking for a government organization, USDA, a couple of months ago, and I shared a little bit about domestic violence. And one of the leaders, very high position, came back and she says, you gave me the courage to finally leave. Because a lot of times it doesn't, we assume that if you see a successful woman doing really well, that they would never be going through that. We just assume it's the disenfranchised communities or the communities where there's poverty. That is not the case. I have seen doctors, there's a neurologist in New Jersey who couldn't get out because what will society think if I leave? Or what if I leave this? Like for me, I was making $150,000 a year plus bonuses at that time. That was good money, but I didn't care about the money. I cared about being safe. So I went to zero, but then things changed, and $150,000 was nothing. What I lost.
Then what really inspired me, and I admire you a lot, is she said, I need to take actions and I need to do something to keep my children safe. So you went back to the company and said, I don't want to work anymore, but I still want to contribute to the company. Can I be a salesperson but in commission only? I mean, that would be a dream for everybody, yeah? So what happened?
So that was the difference. So that was the company I was working for was USA. It's a Fortune 100 company. So I lost everything, lost that job. And now I'm unemployed. I've got my kids to take care of, and Dad lost parental rights, so I have no help. And so then I looked for a job, and I got into healthcare, and they would not give me an opportunity because they said I didn't have experience in sales. So it was really challenging. And finally I said, just pay me straight commission, no salary, you have nothing to lose. And just like they were telling you, your experience, it's a very real experience, because what they told me was, you don't have what it takes to sell these devices that were $35,000 to $150,000. You don't have what it takes. You have to take these doctors out to, the strip club. You have to take them hunting and fishing. And then the VP was just like laughing. You don't look much like a fisherman or a hunter, are you? And I was like, yeah, I don't need that. Just give me an opportunity. And that's how I got into medical device sales. But then I ended up being let go because I was making more money than the CEO of the company. And
so what happened is, because what Mary wanted is, if I just work in commission, I can take my kids with me. I can stay with the kids at home. I can control my life. I don't need to go and work all day and don't know where my kids are. So she ended up flying with her kids everywhere, taking her kids with her, and doing business as a mama, a single mama with the kids, and controlling her life wherever she's going. And it went crazy, yeah?
It was crazy because I remember my kids used to say, Mom, can't you be like a normal mom and work at McDonald's? Do we have to travel all the time? Because they were tired of traveling. And even my youngest, you met him because he would travel with you. Well, he doesn't anymore now because he's 15 now and he's so involved in school. But they would travel with me everywhere, and people would just laugh because they'd see me with my little 4 kids following along in their suitcases like a mama duckling. But yeah, it was
That's so awesome.
it was a great experience for my children, and now that they're adults, they appreciate it. But family is so essential. And you know what I love about Global Woman? They're like family.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like family.
Now, just before we finalize everything, because everybody is wondering now, what happened next? It's like a movie. So how did you end up buying the company that fired you? Because they fired you because you made lots of money and
Yes.
the CEO was not making as much as you.
Exactly. So first I started with a distributorship, and they lost their contract, and so then I ended up working for another company, and that company, they did not want to hire me because, again, going through the same thing all over again, repeat. But I finally got on straight commission, and then the CEO, Dr. Frank Scarpino, who is professor emeritus at University of Dayton, and he works for the Air Force, does contract work, all top secret. Because every time he tells me, "Oh, I worked on this big project," I go, "What is it?" I can't tell you, it's top secret. I hate it. But he said, "You're making more money than we are, and it's not fair." So I was let go, and
It's not fair.
and I was like, happy-go-lucky, right? It just takes a second. I mean, I was having dinner with a VP of marketing, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to get a raise. I was so happy and so excited. And then I get there for dinner, and then he passes a sheet of paper over to me. I look at it, and he's offering me like $150,000 a year, which would have been great a long time ago, but what they didn't realize is I was traveling with my kids, traveling with a nanny, paying my own expenses, and so I was making that or more per month. And so I said, I can't accept that, because I'm a single mom and I'm raising 4 kids. I said, you don't understand. You have to take this offer or you're fired. And I had just sold University of Texas in Austin. I had sold Baylor in Dallas, and those were big accounts. And so they said, no, don't even go to the training, even though you sold those accounts, don't even go to training. And I knew that I couldn't do it because my son, and I believe it's because of all the trauma, because he's fine now. They said he wouldn't live to be past 18. He had autoimmune disease, JDMS, and there was only one doctor at the time who treated that in Houston, Texas. I was living in McAllen. Some of you may know where that's at. That's way down south.
I know, I was
She was there. I had her there. But then I would come here once a month for treatment, and it was $10,000 a month because I didn't have insurance, because I was on commission. So I was paying his health care of $10,000 a month. So I couldn't afford to stay on at what they were offering. So I was let go. And I started another company. I got FDA clearance on a device for cardiovascular diseases. It's a class 2 device. That's the one we were talking about. Then the company that fired me called me, because then the word spread, wow, she's doing really good, right? And they said, are you interested in investing? And when I flew over to the headquarters in Ohio, the accountant says, look at the numbers. I said, wow, they look really great. And he says, no, you don't understand. You did over 80% of the sales when their numbers were the highest. And so I said, I don't want to invest, I want to buy the company. So after 6 months of negotiations, I ended up buying the company that fired me.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, do you love these stories? I mean, do you like it? Do you want more? What else can we give you, ladies? I mean, it is possible. It is absolutely possible. So what did we agree? When you go home and somebody tells you it's not possible, what are you going to say? It's possible. It's possible for you. It's not possible for them. It's possible for you. Okay, who has questions? Questions? Come on, it's your time now.
Don't be shy.
Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah?
I do have a question.
Yeah?
I'm sorry, Sherry. I didn't connect the crabbiness with your...
Because I didn't finish it. But
All right.
because you've given me the crabby nurse, thank you, crabby nurse. My crabby nurse said, what did you bring this husband's dress shirt for? Okay? And I'm like, because I don't know what else to do and you don't provide anything. And then she made me so mad that I actually wanted to design a solution. Even though I failed home ec, I designed a solution. I did. It's the only class I failed. But because of my crabby nurse, I thank her every day. I am personally helping cancer patients literally all over, 150,000 souls because of my crabby nurse. You've all had the crabby nurse, and you think about it as somebody was mean to me. They were not kind, they were not nice. I'm not expecting a nurse to be mean. I'm just like, you ought to be just like right here. Nope. What did you bring this for? Oh, that shocked me into my brain of thinking. So what I want you to do, you think about your life, I want you to literally go through the exercise of thanking your crabby nurse. Because if you take a crabby nurse, it hurts your feelings, and then you overcome, and you bless others with it, thank your crabby nurse. Don't say, oh, this happened to me, they were so mean. Go get it. Go push it back. That's my crabby nurse.
Wow. Any other question? Yes, we have our...
Marian, you mentioned an institute, but you said it so fast I didn't catch it. Is
Okay.
this something you founded, and what is it again?
Yes, the organization is called
can tell us about
it's called the Mimnazine Institute, and it really came out of an experience of understanding that I had when I was really little. My dad would bring home his papers, and I call them his homework because he would have to read these huge stacks every night. And I was a very nosy kid, and I went through his papers, and I saw this one sheet, and it had things that went from 15 cents all the way up to $25. And I said, well, and it had countries' names on there. So I said, well, what's this about? And he said, I want to manufacture something. So I was told by shareholders it has to be at $7.50, so I'm looking for who's offering that. And when you're a little kid, everything's just so simple. And so I just said, well, why don't you go to the people asking for 15 cents or 25 cents, give them the pre-approved $7.50, and everybody's happy, and I just skipped on my way. And my father came over to me, I'll never forget, he got on his knees, so we were looking eye to eye, and he said, thank you for reminding me what my real job in this world is. And I didn't think anything about it, and then in 1996, I'm sitting on my bed, listening to my music, my dad comes into the room, and he throws a book on next to me, turns off the music, goes, everyone your age and younger should be required to read this. It's required reading for your generation and young, because it's the world you're inheriting. And it was The Lexus and the Olive Tree by Thomas Friedman. And as I read it, I remember being introduced to globalization. But they were talking about it in economic terms. They weren't talking about it in sociological terms or environmental terms. And to me, it seemed very logical that as we become more interdependent economically with each other in the world, we're also becoming more interdependent, with the environment and sociologically. We need to know who we're working with. And no one was talking about that. And so then the other thing he said to me was, remember when you asked me to do that when you were a kid? Don't ask me now. I'm 47. I have no idea where it was except it was in Latin America. But he said, we went down there and we did choose one of those communities that was asking 15 cents, and they built schools, they have clinics, they have roads, and not a dime was charity. And it was a wake-up call for me, because it realized, here's my father who had done stuff. He had done Jerry's Kids Telethons, the first in the country to do something like that. He had been, bought land for the American Bald Eagle. He was a very philanthropically minded person. But the power of remembering that you're responsible for what the kind of food families can put on their table when you're behind the desk making decisions, and knowing that the humanitarian hat needs to stay on when you're doing for-profit work as well as non-profit work. That was a real lesson for me. But I also realized that, again, no one was talking about globalization. And I said, how can we make other people get to be at the table make it possible for them to be heard. And that brought us into bringing indigenous people, communities, red line districts, doing all sorts of work like that to make sure that people have input. And that's taken us all around the world today. So that's the focus of what we do.
And the name again?
The Mimnazine Institute. It comes from the mother of the 9 muses. It's also pronounced Namazanine. We did test, and whenever we said Namazanine, people went, And if we said Mimnazine, like, So we went with that pronunciation. But it comes from the Greek mythology, and the Mimnazine River, where you get the word memory, was the accumulated wisdom of humanity. And whereas the other river that a soul could choose to drink from was the Lithe River, Lithe, and that was where you'd forget all the wisdom of humanity. So you ever meet someone that was kind of an idiot? They drink from that river. But the idea is that, humanity right now is at a place where we have more potential now to have an impact. If you have a phone, you have access to more data and information and the ability to project your voice than kings, queens, prime ministers ever had, presidents before you. I mean, this is how powerful everyone in this room is. So, the idea is now that we have those tools, we are the first generation that has no excuse for ignorance. It's a choice to be ignorant. We're also the first generation that really has the power to change the direction of all of humanity. So the question is, how are we going to take on that responsibility? And if we have a choice, if we do it intentionally or unintentionally, because we're doing it whether we do it intentionally or not. And if we choose to do it unintentionally, that's where all hell breaks loose. So within our organization, we try and help people come up with what the answers they have, and we work with the people regionally. So what works in Japan may be different than what works in Rwanda. But actually, there are many times where we find that there are things for them to share, and we make it possible for people to learn from each other, and that's humanity lifting themselves up. So that's the work that we do.
Okay, the final question, the final one.
Oh, come on.
If you don't worry. I think we have given you so much food today. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Just come on.
Okay, I just wanted to ask maybe any one of you, was there anything along the path and the journey that you are now that you would have done differently?
That what? I didn't hear.
You would
Is
have done
anything
differently.
that you have done in the past and now you think you would have done it differently?
I'm very, very blessed to believe that I've lived my life the way I've wanted to. Now, there's been a price at times. Yeah, I was joking earlier, but I remember being in kindergarten and being bored with the books, and so I would go, we were at a school from kindergarten up to 12th grade, and I would sneak out of class, go and find the books that I found interesting, stick them inside the books I was supposed to be studying, be caught, be sent to the principal's office, who'd look at them and go, I can't punish you for wanting to learn something like that. So she would have me go under the window into her hallway so that other teachers couldn't see. She was just letting me continue to read. And the funny thing is, I was telling our good friend, the person that got me sent to the principal's office because I preferred his books over anything else in class was Dr. Irvin Laszlo. And now I'm working on writing a book with him, and he's 93 years old. So, yes, I was the kid sent to the principal's office all the time. I spoke my mind. I asked why. I asked how. All the dreaded questions teachers hate. Funny thing is, now I go on Facebook, and all the teachers that seem to suggest I gave them a hell, they all follow me on Facebook and are friends and encouraging me. So
Always the case.
I think that, what I say to everybody, now I had a unique situation in that, being the one brown person in a very wealthy white world that I was moving in, there was a whole lot of social isolation. There was, kids would say, don't let her touch the towel. See, she's brown. That's because she never bathes. They didn't understand melanin. If I dated interracially, I got spat on by both races at the mall. I got to see a lot of this stuff. And so there was never the choice of being a wallflower. This was going to make me stand out. So I had a choice. And I remember going to the church one day when I was about 5 years old after Sunday school, and just, no one's in there. And I just said, God, if I have to be different, can't I be different in a way I can be proud of? Because here I was wearing my hearing aids that made my ears do this, a big thing around. People say kids are sweet. No, they're not. They'd walk up and turn the volume on. Hey! My teeth, big, thick glasses with stigmatism. I really felt like a little brown Ross Perot. And, but then as I start looking at it, I felt this fire, and call it whatever you want to call it. But this fire was in me, and it just came out. And to this day, we're talking about energy. When you are in your zone, creatively, or you're on stage, your confidence, or maybe you're making that sale and it's just flowing, you feel that fire. And that's that energy. We all have that capacity. And so before I go, one thing that I will share with you, because I think it's not in relation to it, but I want to go back to what you're talking about, energy. My mother once demonstrated to me, and where she went into this big, it was at the Little Nell, a lot of people all in this space, they're at a bar, and they're all moving, and she said, watch. And she walked to the center of the room. No one saw her. There were friends that she knew. They didn't see her. And then she came back to me and said, now watch. She goes in the center of the room, not anything physically different. The energy she pulled up into herself and projected out of nowhere. Deborah, where'd you come from? Oh my God, you're gorgeous. Everybody gravitated to her. And it was a lesson to me about the energy. So when you go into a space, you are winning or losing before you open your mouth. How you project yourself, how you hold yourself, all of that is part of your power. And the people I don't know, but I believe that. We've all felt it when someone's staring at us. What do you think you're feeling? It's not your ears, it's not your eyes, but you feel that. You can project that in a positive and negative way. So, when to go back to what you're talking about, I learned very early on what it was like to feel projected on, and how am I going to react? You can either make yourself small or make yourself big. You only have two choices. So, do I have regrets? Things were hurt, but I don't have a bit of regret, because it made me learn how to control my energy and my presence.
Wow. Well, we have come to the end. In one sentence, what is something?
That question? Okay.
Yeah, what is something that you do differently?
Think.
I can answer.
Yes. All of us.
Think. I never think like normal people. I just really fall in love with thinking differently. Just do it. And my answer I have to complete, I have Asperger's, is stop digging ditches. Stop digging ditches in your business. Don't think you have to do all the workload. So work smarter, not harder. But everybody knows a little cliche, but they don't do it. They still work, they're still digging, they got blisters. Oh, but I'm scaling. Well, you're not being smart. Think differently. Push. Wow. Thank you.
And you, Mary?
So I do have something that I would definitely do differently. So when I started my other business that had to do with cardiovascular issues and diagnosing strokes, diabetes, things of that nature, there was a hospital in Dallas, Texas or not a hospital, clinic. They had a bunch of doctors working for them. So they did everything from neurology, pain management, everything in Flower Mound, which is a suburb there. And the CEO says, every doctor's office should have this device. So I want to become a distributor. So I'm like, okay, great company, great customers, everything seemed awesome. He goes, and I hired a sales rep. And a couple of weeks later, when I met the sales rep, it's like, we're talking about energy. Well, I'm a Christian, and not everybody may believe the way I do. I believe it's the Holy Spirit telling us, like, God is really guiding us and telling us to do something or not to do something, right? And I felt the Holy Spirit telling me, like, no, this guy's bad news. But on the outside, he looked perfect. He had the perfect suit, and he was like, he would go to doctor's offices and he would show his yacht and all this money he had and everything. Well, turned out to be a really, really bad person. I won't go into it, but there's a public record out on there. He hired a hitman to kill me because he wanted to destroy me. But he, in my first book, I couldn't share his name. Because there was still those death threats, and it's public record. But now, my second book, he's dead now because he was, the Department of Justice got him for defrauding the government for like $64 million or something crazy. $24 million. His name is Timothy Armstrong. He ended up committing suicide because he didn't want to go to prison. But I would have said at that time, I would have said, no, I cannot sign a contract with you because I'm not going to work with this man. That's what I would have done, and I didn't do that. And because I didn't do that, I ended up losing that business, and it was generating over $14 million in profit. This is profit. So we're doing over $30-some million but that was just profit that ended up losing because I didn't listen to the Holy Spirit. And I regret that so much to this day.
We have learned today. Wow, wow, wow. Now, if there is something that I would do differently, would be me talking to my younger self and saying, do not worry. If you are worried about what other people are going to say, please do not worry. Because the most important thing is we live our life for ourselves. And forgive yourself. No matter what you have done, please, this is what I would say to myself, why not you're so hard with yourself? Why are you punishing yourself all the time? Why are you saying you could do this and you could do that, you did this wrong? And this self-talk was so negative. I would say change that. Be nice with yourself. Be loving with yourself. Love yourself more and more and more. Wake up in the morning and say, I love you. No matter what you have done in the past, you know what? It doesn't matter. Now, how many times you feel like you have been worried so much for something that now when you think about it, you say, how stupid I was. Why on earth did I worry for something? Now, here is another thing. Most of the time, we worry for things that never happen. But let's suppose it happens. Why do we have to worry twice? Wait until it happens and you worry and maybe change the whole thing. So the whole thing is like, can you be stupid and do not worry? So thank you so much, ladies.